go see Hollywood Shuffle today, please.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're here to talk about 1987's Hollywood Shuffle and its brand new Criterion Blu-ray release that just came out at the end of February. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, some tech and game reviews along the way, then this is the channel for you, and nothing helps this channel out more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So Hollywood Shuffle, it came out in 1987, is directed and starring Robert Townsend. It was co-written by him and Keenan Ivory Wayans. And actually, Keenan Ivory Wayans is actually what attracted me to this film. I know Robert Townsend's huge. He was big in the 90s. He was on that show, The Parenthood. He also did The 5 Heartbeats, which I've never seen, but I've heard amazing good things about, and I believe that was also co-written by him and Keenan Ivory Wayans. But I really came back and wanted to go see this movie for the first time because I'd never seen Hollywood Shuffle until I got to it this time. And the reason I wanted to check it out was because of Keenan Ivory Wayans. I'm a huge Wayans Brothers fan. I'm a huge fan of In Living Color. All of Keenan Ivory Wayans directed films such as I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, Don't Be a Menace in South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, and the first two Scary Movie movies. I really think that Keenan Ivory Wayans has a great taste for comedy that really suits my style. Many people would say it's very juvenile and, you know, very dumb humor. Well, I really like that dumb humor. That humor always works for me, and Keenan Ivory Wayans' fingerprints are all over this script because this movie, I'm going to give you a basic plot of it because it's a very simple plot. It just follows it follows Robert Townsend's character of Bobby Taylor. He's a young, struggling actor. He wants to follow his dream and become an actor, and he's got a big audition coming up that he feels like he has a good shot at it, but it's another stereotypical black character. I believe he's playing a pimp, and, you know, that's really what this movie is exploring, is how black actors and really any minority actors were treated in the 80s in films. They always play stereotypical roles such as thugs, gang members. You know, actually it's a really funny, because this movie does have a bunch of like little vignettes in it. It really is, you could just tell that the guy who would eventually make In Living Color, the way it's structured is just it's following a running plot line, but it's broken up by a bunch of like little segments in here, like little 10, some are a little bit longer than others, but one big one is a school for black actors that is being taught by white people. So the white people are the teachers, but they're teaching black actors how to act black. And, you know, all the people in this commercial are basically saying, like, you know, hey, yeah, you know, they let me play a thug once, and I even got to play a rapist twice. And they're like saying that's the mountaintop for black actors. It's like, you know, you have your roles, because white people are the ones like saying that this is the roles that you play. And that's really what this movie is just showing throughout. That's really like the story of this movie. But the plot of the movie is just following Bobby Taylor as he wants to get his big break in Hollywood. He hates his job that's where Keenan Ivory Wayans works at, and also John Witherspoon, who is, again, one of the all-time great comedic actors. And he shows up in a lot of, you know, comedies throughout the 80s and 90s. Obviously, he's most probably famous for the Friday movies, but he's in here as well. And they all work at this little hot dog hut that Bobby Taylor works at, but he's always flaking out. They always say, like, yeah, you're not committed to the job, because he wants to follow his dream. And that's the point. And this movie actually, art illustrates reality. This movie cost $100,000 to make, and from what I understand, Robert Townsend put a lot of this on credit cards. Like, he gambled on himself. You know, there's a great thing on this Criterion collection when we get to the Blu-ray about how, like, he would get a white van and he would just shuffle them around, like, around Hollywood and just take them places, shoot things, because they didn't have permits, because, you know, they had no money. This is a really low-budget film that was a gamble that paid off. It's about following your dream, and that's exactly what the movie's about. So art really does follow reality sometimes, and this is a perfect example of that, because Robert Townsend and Keenan Ivory Wayans, really, this is where they got their shot at stardom. 2 years later, Keenan Ivory Wayans would direct I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, which is one of my personal favorite comedies of the 80s. I think that movie is hysterical. Now, the jokes in both this movie and the jokes in I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, like, some of those jokes are very dated and can be seen as offensive in today's time, and I completely understand that. You know, you just got to kind of take a step back and go, well, this movie came out in 1987. That's 36 years ago. And, you know, it was just a different world. They didn't know any better. So some of these jokes, you know, if you watch this movie now, can definitely seem offensive. And it's the same thing with a lot of movies from that time. But don't let that detract you from the overall story and just the story of how this movie was made, because it is extremely fascinating. And on top of that, this movie is just flat out funny. I mean, and it has a heart to it. I love the running joke about the post office.
There's always work at the post office.
which leads up to a very satisfying ending, because I don't want to spoil it, but just keep an eye out for like a bunch of the short little vignettes that are throughout this entire film. You know, like the one that really stands out as something that we would eventually see kind of rearranged on In Living Color is there's a skit in here which is clearly just a spoof of Siskel and Ebert's show, because it's just two guys, they sneak into a movie theater and they just review films, and all these films are just basically spoofs of other more famous films, like, you know, you got Rambro or Dirty Larry. Like, these are all movies that are spoofs on more famous movies with a black actor in the lead, and then you have these two guys reviewing it. So on In Living Color, they did another Siskel and Ebert spoof show that was very famous with David Alan Grier and Damon Wayans called Men on Film. So I think that Keenan Ivory Wayans kind of had this idea that he loved a spoof, a satire of Siskel and Ebert, and, you know, he would rework that on In Living Color, which I think to also great results. So you could see Keenan Ivory Wayans' fingerprints all over this, because I'm such a big Wayans Brothers fan, like I said, so where his fingerprints are all over the script, whereas I'm not too familiar with Robert Townsend as much. Like I said, I haven't seen The Five Heartbeats. I heard that movie is great. Actually, I'm probably going to check it out now that I just saw this, because I truly love this movie. Like, I was actually genuinely surprised. Now, this movie's 78 minutes long, so, you know, you're in and out really fast. It never wastes your time. So the point to that, I actually watched this 2 days ago, and then I watched it again last night because I just had so much fun watching this movie, and it goes by so fast. You get some good laughs out of it, and, you know, it's got such a dreamy tone to it, and again, made on a $100,000 budget, so it really is just so impressive about how they made this movie and how well it actually stands the test of time. Yes, like I said earlier, there are some jokes in here that definitely haven't aged well, but, I mean, the overall message of this movie, I think, has, and the jokes and the comedy, I think they're all funny. I think you'll get some laughs out of it. I think you'll be entertained, and if you are a fan of, like I said, that dumb sense of humor that I really am a fan of, I really think you're going to appreciate it, and at the end of the day, there's a little bit of heart in this movie, too, and I'm really glad that the Criterion Collection put out this Blu-ray and made me aware of this film that I really wasn't aware of, and we're going to review that Criterion Blu-ray right now.
I just want to be me. I don't want to be Eddie Murphy. I just want
Hollywood Shuffle.
So to give you guys just a little peek behind the curtain here, I was actually going to review The Lighthouse, which just came on 4K from Robert Eggers and A24, but you know, they sent me the standard edition Blu-ray, and I wanted to come on here and tell you, what the fuck, A24, you know, you kind of screwed me over. I went back and I looked, and it turns out the person who screwed me over was myself. I ordered the standard edition. I didn't switch it to 4K, probably because I was in a rush, but, you know, can't blame A24 for my stupidity. So I had to, you know, call an audible, and last week, Rico Gomez made us aware of a Criterion flash sale that was going on. I grabbed some stuff in there, and one thing that just came out at the end of February was Hollywood Shuffle, and like I said, I was very interested in checking this out because co-written by Keenan Ivory Wayans and Robert Townsend. I'm a big Wayans Brothers fan, so I was like, oh man, I'm going to grab this. This came out 2 years before I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. I love that movie. Let's see where Keenan Ivory Wayans got his start. So I got my hands on this. I believe it came out February 28, 2023, and the packaging, you know, it's standard Criterion stuff. This isn't one of their digibooks or any of their special collection cases. This is their standard cases. There's no 4K of this. You can only get this on 1080p Blu-ray, and this also only has one audio track on it. It's a mono track. You have no audio options. And honestly, as far as Criterion releases, this is probably one of the more bare bones releases I've actually ever seen from them. They do make up for it in other areas because there is only one other Blu-ray release of this. I believe it came out in 2015. So, you know, this isn't as well-known film, and I really think that hopefully this Criterion Collection Blu-ray does make more people aware of it, especially people around my age who, you know, I was born just after this movie came out, a few years later. So, you know, it's like something that, because of the low budget, it doesn't get promoted as much with both Robert Townsend and Keenan Ivory Wayans' history. So I'm hoping that, you know, Criterion Collection takes significant films like this one and, you know, shines a light on them. And you know what? This cover really does stand out. It's a beautiful piece of artwork. I think it's, you know, I like the original movie poster because I'm a big fan of, like, those big neon colors, and it has, you know, neon blue and purple. So, you know, obviously you see that our thumbnails, so that stuff always stands out to me. But even this is still very nice. I love this artwork, and it's a nice alternative artwork. You know, like I said, just your standard packaging here. You open it up, one disc, everything is on that disc, one Blu-ray, and, you know, again, one thing really cool about Criterion, they always give you quite a bit of reading material, which if you're a fan of the movie, always appreciate a little bit of something extra like that. It really does help to make the price of this really easy. Although, like I said, I got this at a Criterion flash sale, so I only spent, I think, 18 bucks on it, which I do feel like is probably what it should be priced at regularly, because compared to other Criterion releases. I feel like this was definitely one of the more bare bones releases. Now, it is a brand new 4K scan, but it's obviously a 1080p Blu-ray, so it's compressed down and you don't get any HDR or Dolby Vision on here, so it's just going to be your standard 1080p resolution with a brand new scan. And this scan, it did look really damn good. I had nothing to compare it to. I've never seen this movie before, but from what I understand, when a movie is made for $100,000, I'm sure that the source material was a little bit rough, and it didn't show on screen. You know, obviously they shot this on locations, real locations, and that stuff really does stand out, like when they're in Los Angeles. You know, it just, at the very beginning of this movie, you know, Robert Townsend's driving around in a car around LA to different areas, and, you know, they got a really nice song playing, which, like, you know, it's just something that I personally appreciate, the score that was playing in the scene, and, like, the sun is shining. It makes you want to go to LA, and that's what this movie's trying to do, is sell you a dream. Like, in a sense, like a guy's living his dream. That's why this movie feels very dreamy in certain sequences. This Blu-ray, with this new scan, I think did the best job it possibly could, because I can imagine seeing this on VHS and it just being, you know, just so worn out and flat. I could see it in there, but this Blu-ray does not have those issues. It's not the greatest looking Blu-ray I've ever seen. You know, it's not like the greatest scan I've ever seen. There's scenes where it's very grainy, you know, and like I said, all that, I'm sure with this budget is all source material stuff. I'm sure that this is the best this movie can possibly look, except unless we eventually ever get a 4K scan. And for a movie like this, which I imagine, I don't have the sales figures in front of me, it's probably not one of their best selling Blu-rays from Criterion, which is probably why it didn't get, you know, the Citizen Kane treatment or the Malcolm X treatment, where, you know, they sprung for all the bells and whistles, multiple discs. But that's not to say we didn't get any new extras on here. Like, let me be clear. Like, there's an audio commentary track on here with Robert Townsend. I didn't check that one out yet, but there's also a really cool interview with what they call, actually, if you ever look on the Wikipedia page too, they actually say this movie stars Robert Townsend and the Hollywood Shuffle Players. So basically they have interviews with all the small actors who appear in all these, like, different segments of the film. You know, they were changing characters throughout. That's why they call them the Hollywood Shuffle Players. So they're playing a bunch of different roles in this movie, not just one. They're not just locked down to one single role. And they have interviews with them and exactly, like, what it was like to shoot this film. And I actually thought that segment was awesome. Again, I just would have liked more. Like, I would have loved an interview with Keenan Ivory Wayans on here. I would have loved, like, maybe even some old interviews from the making of this movie. Like, I told you guys a million times, if you just put a making of documentary, I'll always just be happy with those extras. I love a really good making of documentary on any sort of Blu-ray or 4K. I really think that is the peak of what an extra should be on a Blu-ray. I mean, some movies that you wouldn't expect have them, but then a movie like this, which I think would really, I think just because the story of how this movie was made, I really do think like a really good hour documentary would just be perfect with Robert Townsend, Keenan Ivory Wayans, all the Hollywood Shuffle Players, and then talking with people from today and what this movie has meant not only to black actors but to Hollywood in general, and like the long-lasting significance of this, because like I said, this is the movie that got Keenan Ivory Wayans and Robert Townsend on the map. So, you know, it has historical significance. So 1 hour documentary would have just been nice, but again, that's me nitpicking. I just felt like this is just a very bare bones release from Criterion. But that's not to say it's a bad release, and also I wouldn't have seen this movie without this release, so hopefully you stumble upon this review and now you're thinking, maybe I'll grab that the next time Criterion has a sale or Barnes & Noble has their sale, because I can't recommend it at the full price, which I believe is $31 on Criterion's site, but if you can get that 50% off sale, this is definitely the kind of movie you grab in one of those sales, because I just don't think that it compares to other Criterion releases as far as the quality goes. But that's not to say that the quality of the film doesn't match up, because like I said, I truly love this film. This will be going into my permanent rotation. You know, it's something that, this is a kind of movie you could just throw on fast because it's less than 90 minutes. Just have a good time with it. You know, you get home and you're tired, you want to throw something on. This is a movie that's just perfect for that. You're going to get some laughs. You know, it's going to tug at your heartstrings a little bit, and the message is good. And I'm really glad that this Criterion Blu-ray does exist. And if I was going to rate this out of 10, I would still give it a pretty damn solid 7.5 out of 10. I don't expect us to ever get a 4K release of this. I would be shocked, even though the 4K scan is there. I would love to see it with some Dolby Vision or HDR10, maybe a new audio track, because like I said, the one that's on here, you have no choice. but to take that really standard audio track that is on here. Not to say that it's bad, it was crisp and clear. You did, set your remote down and stuff like that, but pretty bare bones. It's only front loaded. Everything's coming out of one channel, so you're going to be a little bit disappointed, I feel like, if you're comparing it to modern Blu-rays and 4Ks, but it's understandable, again, for source material, so I still am very happy with my purchase, and I really do think that you will be too, as long as you don't buy it at full price, because if you're going to compare it to other boutique label releases, I feel like you will be disappointed. But before we get out of here today, it is Friday, and that means it's time for this week's Digital Code Giveaway. So if you're new to the channel, this is your first video here. We do this every single week. On Friday's video, either Matt or I will ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below. You don't have to answer both, but we will not stop you if you do. And if you do answer one of those questions, you come back to this Monday's video, I will place your name on a magic wheel. We will spin that wheel 2 times, pick ourselves 2 different winners, and those winners have their choice of the digital codes that are on your screen before you today. Last week's winners took both of our core codes, so that's off the board this week. But just so you guys know, we actually have 2 Daniel Craig collection codes. So if you're a fan of the Daniel Craig Bond movies, we have that, but I believe 4 films. I think it doesn't include No Time to Die, so that's going to be replacing the core on this week's digital code giveaway. And what are this week's digital code giveaway questions? Well, this is a comedy. It's from the 80s. I'm going to ask you guys, what is your favorite 80s comedy of all time? And in line with comedy, I figured I'm going to ask you guys also, since this is a spoof film, what is your favorite spoof film? Keenan Ivory Wayans was the king of that with the scary movies and I'm Gonna Get You Sucker and Don't Be a Menace in South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. But then you also had the classic Mel Brooks spoof movies. You had the Hot Shots movies. Like, there was just so many spoof. We don't get them anymore. I'm a big fan of a good satire, a good spoof movie. Like, if they could just bring that back, I would be so happy. Airplane. We don't get these movies anymore. But we don't really get comedies anymore. That's a story for another day. Maybe one day I'll make a video on how I feel about them not bringing comedies out to the movie theaters anymore. I used to go see a comedy in theaters like at least once a month when I was growing up until my early adult 20s. Comedy is one of my favorite genres, and I think it's one of the hardest genres to nail because everyone's got a different sense of humor, and I would love more comedies. And I want to know, what's your favorite 80s comedy and what is your favorite spoof movie? So let us know that in the comment section below, and then come back to this Monday's video to see if you are this week's lucky winners. And anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here with me on another edition of Let's Talk. If you like this channel, nothing would help this channel out more than by you liking this video, subscribing to the channel, searching for us on all podcast services because we do put out 2 of those a week. Give us a 5-star rating on there after you have subscribed. And then after you're done doing all of that, I want you to go to your nearest car dealership, buy the first convertible you see, drive down a road really slow, and tell everybody about Let's Talk Entertainment and Media, and we'll be seeing you guys around. Enjoy your weekend, guys.